program. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Allie. I'm a doctor of physical therapy as well as a nationally certified Pilates instructor. I founded the Pilates RX, which is based here in Boston. I practice there and then teach with the Community Online Academy all day on Thursdays. So today's class is our traditional back pain program. It's a 30-minute program, almost entirely movement-based. We'll do some stretching, some strengthening, and a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So if anything comes up, send it to me in the chat. I'll read it and do my best to answer as many questions as I can at the end. Before we get moving, I just encourage you to please listen to your body, especially when it comes to back pain. Everyone's dealing with something a little bit different. Nothing we do in this class should hurt, and I hope that you can take the modifications I offer so that you leave this class feeling a little bit better than you came into it. One thing I've been talking a little bit about today is that doing more is not always better for your back. Sometimes scaling it back a little bit, being gentle with your body is what it needs. So we're going to get started down onto the mat with a little bit of breath work. You can choose to have your knees bent or legs totally flat and extended. So whatever position is comfortable for your body. And rest all the way down. So you can kind of let your shoulders melt back, your tailbone be heavy, letting go of tension in the head, neck, jaw, tension in your feet. And just relax down here for a moment. Give yourself even a little pat on the back just for showing up on your mat today. I know it's been a very long week for many people, so resting down and thanking yourself for being here is the first step. So as you scan and notice how your body's feeling in this moment in time, start to tune your attention to your breath and taking your inhale breaths in through the nose, expanding the ribs wide out to the side, and an exhale breath out, releasing and letting go of air at the bottom of your lungs. So when we think about our back pain and we think about how our back moves, a lot of the muscles that help us with breathing also help to stabilize our spine. So by just starting with this deeper breath and really exhaling as though you're releasing the air from the very bottom part of your lungs, you're starting to work to stabilize those little muscles surrounding the spine. We'll try a few more gentle cleansing breaths here. And it doesn't have to be forceful, but I want you to think about pointedly sending that breath down into your belly, into your ribs. 2 more like that. And release, let it go. Try once more there. And release, letting it go. From here, we're going to go into some pelvic tilts. So gently start to rock your tailbone front to back. And if you imagine the space underneath your low back, that space is getting bigger and smaller as you rock the tailbone front to back. Now, this goal is really just to create a little bit of movement in your spine. We're not here to do big stretching. It certainly shouldn't be painful. We're just warming up the back in that forward and backward bending motion. So if you are noticing any pain or tenderness, just back off a little bit. We're just here to build in a little bit of extra blood flow. Good. 4 more. And 3, let your breath be comfortable and natural. Last 2. 1 more time here, and then settle in the middle. From here, now walk your feet together, knees together, and allow your arms to rest down by your side. We're going to now add in some rotation, but same thing, just to add some blood flow, some very gentle movement here. So think this is not necessarily your end range of motion. It may not even feel like a stretch. Just gently rock your knees side to side in your body's pain-free range of motion. And it's okay for your hips to lift here, but I'd like you to keep your shoulders down on the mat. And maybe allowing your feet to lift, but keeping the feet together and keeping your knees together. And that's really important here to help us target the rotation in our lower back as opposed to rotating just in our hip joint. Good. And notice how as you start to move here, hopefully that mobility starts to increase a little bit. You maybe go a little bit farther from side to side. Good. 3 more times here. That's it. Last 2. And once more here, and then go ahead and settle somewhere right into the middle. Now separate your feet back to that hips distance apart. We're gonna go into a bridge, which is helpful to kind of release the muscles on the front of the hip, which tend to get quite tight from sitting, but it's also to strengthen and bring blood flow to our hips, our glute muscles, and they provide a huge support for our back in many things we do. So ground the feet into the mat, push through all 5 toes, dig your heels down, and lift your hips into a bridge and hold. Now in this position, oftentimes people feel pressure in their low back, and it's because the rib cage is too high. So think of closing your ribs down. One of the best ways to do so is with a strong exhale breath, and that naturally draws the rib cage into place. From there, bring your hands to your glutes. Make sure that you can feel that they are working. Ground the feet down into the mat. If this is challenging, I just want you to stay here. But if you can, gently lower down, tap the hips, and lift them back up. We're just going to do a couple like this, seeing if you can keep those glute muscles active and keep the space between your ribs and hips the same. So that means your back isn't moving, but your hips are. Good. 3, lift, and 2. Good, guys. We're going to challenge our endurance a little bit here. Lift and hold. Now see if you can keep your hips lifted and lift and lower your heels without changing your hip height. Good. 4 more. And 3. Last 2. Last time, drop the hips down, heels down, and allow your legs to rock side to side. Once again, rinsing out your lower back. From here, we're going to take this into a little abdominal work, and our abs work in 2 ways. The first is to help stabilize our spine. So that means keeping our spine still when our arms and legs are moving. So what I'd like you to start with here is keeping your hands resting down onto your belly. Imagine like you have a little marble resting right on your navel. See if you can keep that marble from rolling off your belly as you lift your legs side to side. And if this is feeling pretty easy, you say, yep, I'm good. I'm keeping that marble nice and steady. Go ahead and bring your legs up to the tabletop position. And then you can work to extend one leg out at a time. Now, same thing, that marble should still be there. You can always modify by pushing the legs up a little higher towards the ceiling. If you'd like to try one more challenge here, reach your arms up and you can stretch opposite arm and opposite leg away from one another. Now, I know that can be a little bit hard to see here with the dark pants, but try imagining here opposite arm, opposite leg. So right arm, left leg, left arm, and right leg, reaching away from one another. Slow and steady is better here. If you go really fast, it can be hard to sense those changes. Try exhaling as you reach away, inhaling, bend back in. Exhale, reach out, inhale, bend back in. 3 more. And 2. Once more here, and bend back in. Good. Hug your knees in towards your chest and gently rock your legs from side to side, massaging out your lower back. Excellent. So from here, we're going to try the function of our abdominals in that second way, which is to create movement and help us sit up. So we'll reach the arms long overhead. This is optional. You can just press yourself up to a seat. But if you'd like, try exhaling as you curl and lift your spine up into a seated position. Nice job. So from here, we're going to take a nice hamstring stretch. If when you try and sit up tall, it already feels really tight in your hamstrings, unlock your knees a little bit. If you have a history of sciatica, definitely unlock your knees here. So sitting tall, roll the shoulders down and back, keep your feet together. Keeping that tall spine, instead of draping forward over our legs, we're going to keep the flat back and just tip and hinge forward. And that should help you to feel a stretch in the back of your legs. If you're feeling numbness or tingling in your toes, back off and bend your knees a little bit more. If you're also mostly feeling the stretch in your calf, that means that you're stretching the nerve. Our hamstring muscle doesn't go into our calf. The only thing that extends that long is our sciatic nerve. So that may be a little bit irritating for the nerve. So you can bend your knees and tip forward just a bit more. You'll feel that a little deeper into the hamstring muscle itself. We'll try a nice big deep breath in here and a deep breath out. And once more, just like that. Good. And then gently come all the way on up. So we're going to flip on over into the all fours position next. Now, if you know you need some padding for your knees or your wrists, go ahead and roll up your mat a couple of times so that you have that available to you. And find your hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Once you're in this position, push the floor away from you. Draw your ribs up away from the floor and allow your low back to have its natural curve. So in fact, we'll try a couple pelvic tilts here. So if you imagine your lower back doing that same pelvic tilting motion, gently rounding and gently allowing it to curve. So work within your body's comfortable range of motion, but sometimes exploring those two extremes can be helpful in finding that mid range of motion. So once you have found it, we'll call this our neutral spine. And so we're going to try and stretch our hips now. And the way we'll know we're stretching our hips, but not our back, is by keeping our back nice and still. So imagine now you have a whole tray of waters on your back. You're going to gently push your hips backwards and then shift forward, going only as far as you can without disrupting your tray of waters. So notice, like if I went really fast, really far, my back might round. I'm trying to keep my back in that neutral position and just shifting front to back. It's not a huge range of motion, but you may actually start to feel a real stretch in your hip joint. This is what's called a hip hinge. That means we're bending at our hips, but not bending our back. And the hip hinge is the foundation of squatting, of bending over and lifting really heavy things while protecting our back. You may also start to feel that this becomes a little bit of work from your core to hold your spine in that neutral setup. Good. Twice more like this. That's it. One more time there. Good. Now our hips are a ball and socket joint, so they move in a circular direction. So now we're going to keep that tray of waters steady, but start to draw circles with our hips. Okay, so it's like my whole body is kind of drawing the shape of a clock as I rotate around, noticing that maybe in certain points your rib cage wants to drop and other points your low back wants to round. Just holding that neutral spine and noticing maybe if there's tightness in one side more than the other. That's okay. We're just noticing it. Good. 3 more in this direction and then we'll switch. That's it. Good. Last 2. And once more here. And then we rotate direction. So same thing, opposite direction. Now we're drawing that clock, but we're winding it up clockwise. And notice this direction usually feels a little bit trickier. So our body always picks the path of least resistance first. I know this one feels a little bit tighter for my body. I'm actively lifting my rib cage up and in as though it's giving my stomach a gentle hug and just shifting back and around. Good. 3 more. Twice more like that. Good. And 1 more time here. And then settle somewhere in the middle. You can lift your hands up, give your wrists a quick break, and shake it out. Now, we're going to try to build on that hip hinging bending movement with a little bit more core work. And there's 2 options here. We're going to be up in a plank, but I'm going to demo the modified version first. So in that modification, your hands are down onto the mat and your knees are down, lowered into a plank setup. So it's as though you're still in that neutral spine, but your hips are nice and low in a plank. From here, you're going to press back, find that sort of downward dog puppy stretch, and then gently shift forward all the way into your plank. Okay, so everybody can try this here with me. If you know that this is feeling pretty easy, Bear with me. We're going to do the bigger version in just a moment. We'll try one more just like this. If you'd like to try that bigger movement, go ahead and lift into your full plank, draw your ribs up away from the floor and start to push back into your full downward dog, and then gently shift forward, coming all the way back to your plank. Now, if again, you were feeling that tightness in your hamstrings, unlock your knees a little bit. That may help you to maintain your neutral spine a little bit more. Good. And lift through the head, neck, and chest. You have 4 more. Gently shift forward. That's it for 3. Lifting on forward, last 2. Good. Once more here. Come all the way into your plank, and we hold it there for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Drop the knees down, and you can go ahead and lower right onto your stomach. So from this position on your stomach, if you immediately have low back soreness, you could place a pillow underneath your hips. If not, separate your feet a little wider than hip distance, plant your hands flat underneath the mat, and start to curl to lift your upper back. And if you feel comfortable lifting up a bit higher, you can come all the way up into your low back. So work within what's good and comfortable for your body. I suspect that as you move a little bit through this range of motion, you will have less discomfort in a bigger range. Let your arms do the work here. Push your hands down into the floor. Think about shining your heart forward. Keep your head tall, long, and lifted, and gently lowering back down onto the mat. Excellent, good. So this is a stretch into spine extension. An extension is the opposite of how we spend our time sitting. So I want you to think of it though, not just as an extension of your low back, but an extension of your upper back as well. So as though you're lifting and shining your chest and your heart forward and softly, gently melting back onto the mat. Notice too, if your head is really hanging back, your gaze should be on the mat in front of you so that your neck is just an extension of the rest of your spine. Good. 2 more. And gently melt down. Once more here, pressing on up. And lower all the way down. And then you can push yourself up and back. And this time we will allow the hips to round back into that shell stretch or child's pose. So if you cannot sit with your knees together and back, you can try opening your knees wide but feet together and sitting back. If you cannot do that either, you can keep your hips up high and drop your chest down for what I would call kind of a puppy dog stretch. So the way a dog might stretch their paws in the morning. Now, in any of these positions, if you have shoulder discomfort, just bend your elbows out to the side slightly. Maybe allow your forehead to rest down onto the mat, and use this time when most of the front of your chest is compressed to practice breathing into the backside of the ribs. So I think a lot of times we forget that our ribs wrap all the way around to the back of our spine. A lot of times that's an area that's quite tight. And using our lungs, we can kind of use that like a balloon inside the rib cage to create mobility. So breathing big and deep into the back side of your ribs. We'll try one more time here. Big breath in. And then come on up to a comfortable seated position. Now, I've had some questions. I often choose a cross-legged sit because it is comfortable. My hips are pretty flexible. But if this is not a comfortable position for you, there's a bunch of options. So you can put a couple pillows under your hips. You can sit in a diamond seated position. You can have your legs out in front of you. You could even sit with your legs tucked underneath you. So find something that works for your body. And once you find that, think of lifting and growing your spine up tall through the top of your head. Open up your wingspan, reach the fingertips wide, and take up space. Grow taller, drop the shoulders away from the ears, and gently allow your spine to start to bend sideways. So as you do this gentle sideways bending, think of your spine here like an accordion, opening and closing on each side of your ribs. And this is a nice way to gain mobility to do the side plank, side lifting exercise here. Dropping the shoulders down away from the ears, keep the top of the head tall. Good. Now we're going to add in a gentle rotation in just a moment. This time it'll be a rotation of our upper back. Good. So the next time your left hand is down, pause, reach the right arm up overhead. Now stretch the right fingertips up and over, like you're really opening your rib cage on the side, keeping that long stretch. Start to rotate as though you might tap the right hand to the floor in front of you, and then open it back up. Now you may not be able to get to the floor, and that's okay. Think of turning your rib cage as though you're looking down and then gently opening it back up. Slow and steady here. Gently rotating, turning down and opening it back up. 3 more times just like this. And push that left hand into the floor for 2. 1 more time there. Open it back up. Good. We're going to teeter-totter with that right hand down, left arm up and over, taking that nice long side stretch here and start to rotate, tapping the left hand down. So again, with this upper back rotation, it's normal to have a big difference from side to side, and that's because we have a dominant arm. Just notice it here and be gentle with your body. This shouldn't be painful. You're just gently twisting into a range that feels like a stretch, but not pain. See if you can push your right hand away from you at the same time. Twice more like this. And 1 more time here. Good. And lower the arm down. Now, I want to finish our class up and standing today. I think we do so much sitting. I'd love to show you guys a couple little things you can do up and standing, but there's a nice challenge to test ankle mobility, hip mobility, and back mobility all at the same time. So don't be afraid if you can't do this. It's very challenging, but I'd love for you guys to give it a try if you'd like. So you can cross one ankle on top of the other. Try reaching your fingertips in front of you and see if you can come up to standing. Okay, so you can give it a try. Like I said, don't worry, it takes practice, it takes flexibility, but see if you can try that one. So now once you're up in standing, feel your feet ground into the mat beneath you. And I want your feet to be hip distance apart. And remember that our hips are not the widest part of our legs. The hip joint is our femur bone coming up into our pelvis. So it's usually about in the middle of the length or the width of your leg. So when you look down, it's usually more narrow than people think. Push your feet down into the floor, lift your spine up tall and long. Once you have that tall spine, reach your fingertips up to the ceiling, get long and lifted. As you exhale, start to twist, reaching your fingertips in front, the opposite behind, and lift up to the ceiling. So my feet are staying planted. I'm gluing the feet to the floor and using the leverage of my arms up and over, reaching in opposite directions to take a gentle twist. Now, if you have shoulder discomfort, you can do this with a modified bent elbows. Okay, so think like a goalpost, but use the reach of your elbows or your fingertips in opposite directions to help spin you a little bit deeper as your feet press into the floor beneath you. That's it. Get tall, twist, reach to the opposite side, get tall through the center and twist. Good. 2 more each side. Twist and reach. Come up once more each side. Good. Push the feet down below you. This is our last time here. And then come all the way up, drop your arms down. Now I'll turn to the side for our final stretch here, which will be a roll down. So reaching your fingertips up tall, imagine this little fence in front of you. And you don't want to touch the fence. You're going to dive up and over the fence to allow your spine to roll down. Again, tight hamstrings or sciatic, a history of sciatica, bend your knees. Allow your head to hang heavy. You can shake it yes and no. You can wiggle your hips side to side a little bit. Keep pushing your feet down into the mat. Take a big expansive inhale, breath in. As you exhale, push your feet down into the mat, start to curl, rolling the spine up slow and steady, one vertebrae at a time, reaching the fingertips up tall overhead and dropping the arms down by your side. Now we're gonna finish class just like we started with breath work, but when you find your position for community breath together, I want you to push your feet into the floor. So they should be parallel. They're grounding you. They're giving you that stable base of support. Lift your spine tall. We'll take an inhale and exhale, release and let it go. Again, another inhale, breath here, reach, get long and tall, and exhale, release and let it go. Once more here, inhale, lift, get tall and long, and exhale, release and let it go. Give yourself a gentle pat on the back again for doing something so healthy, so positive for your body, especially late at night. So thank you guys for joining the movement-based part of our class. I want to spend our last couple minutes going over any questions that you have about today's program or about back pain. I also ask that if you have a moment or two to stick around to leave some feedback for today's program, I'd really appreciate it. So let me just get a bit closer so I can see here if there's anything hiding in the chat yet. We are a smaller group, so if you guys would like to unmute yourself to ask a question too, go ahead and do so. And yeah, I'm happy to answer anything that comes up. Nancy, thanks for joining. Maria, thank you for joining. Morali, thank you. Alexis, thank you. You guys are great, such kind feedback. For those of you who may have to get going, I'll share my screen to give the feedback app, and that way I can answer some questions in the meantime. So let me put the QR code up, and then I'll answer a couple questions that just came through. So if you haven't used the QR code, you just open your phone's camera, hover it over that code, and the app will pop up, as well as the populated meeting tag and me as an instructor. So that way I know what class you're talking about when you leave feedback. Okay, so Diana asked, my upper and mid back are sore. Am I doing something wrong? So Diana, probably not. We did, especially in that last stretch, do some mobilizing of the upper back. And while this is a low back class, a lot of times there is stiffness in the upper back that causes stress to the low back. And so as we start to work and to mobilize those joints, it is normal, especially if it's the first couple times trying that, for it to be a little bit sore. What you can do if it feels like intolerable is just modify your range of motion a little bit next time on the stretches that target your upper back and work into it slowly. But I think that ultimately it's not a bad thing. It may just be your body adjusting a little bit to a new range of motion. Bianca, thank you so much. Katie, thank you. Suzanne, thank you. Miranda, thank you very much. Jennifer, that's awesome. Thank you. And Dawn, thank you as well. So Andrea asked, what is a good exercise for when you have a knot in your shoulder? So I'm not going to cover that in this class, but I do teach a whole class on neck and shoulder pain where we do a lot of release work for the upper back, the shoulder, the neck, and we go over in detail sort of how to approach that. So you can access those on the Video Hub, first of all, but I'd love to have you join in the live class at some point too. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But on the Video Hub, there's tons of content out there with my neck and shoulder pain class. I would definitely recommend taking a look at that for a release of knots in the shoulder. So Cliff asked, my low back, left and right of the lower spine is sometimes sore after yoga, weights, or HIIT exercises. Is this normal? Yes and no. So normal in the sense that I hear this all the time. It's common, but is it normal? I would say no. So really no type of exercise, in my opinion, should cause back pain. sometimes, very rarely, you can have a little bit of muscle soreness, but it shouldn't be back pain. And if it is back pain, that usually means that your lower back was doing the work of what some other muscles in your body should be doing. And the muscles in our low back relatively are pretty small, and they're not really designed to take the work and load of something like our glutes. So if you guys can just picture anatomy for a moment, think about the size of our glutes, our butt muscles, versus the size of those thin little muscles that lie on our low back. If you're not engaging your glutes at moments when they should be working, that's tremendously stressful to our back. So hopefully today you learned a little bit about form on how to activate those muscles. It definitely takes practice. There's also a balance of having your core on and finding support from your core. I think one of the difficult things when you're learning this, especially with like a HIIT style workout, is that it's very fast. And so you might know good form, but it's very hard to maintain that when you go quickly. Don't be afraid to slow down your pace. I always think quality over quantity. You're going to get more out of your workout if you're using the right muscles anyway. So don't be afraid to slow things down. With yoga, I think people tend to sometimes overstretch. So especially people who tend to be more on the flexible side, they can stretch and stretch and stretch, but that can be a little bit stressful to the joint. So you need muscular support in your poses. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I realize you guys probably can't even see me. I know that's a long-winded answer to that question. I hope that answers a little bit of what you are talking about, but if you have more questions about that, send them over to me. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Claire.